Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. And in this episode, we are rounding out a trilogy we started a couple of months ago, a samurai trilogy from Japan. It is the Samurai Trilogy. I said a samurai trilogy from Japan, but that's basically the name of it as well.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it
didn't
is.
mean that. I didn't mean that. This is Samurai 3 Duel at Ganryu Island. Obviously, we did Samurai 1 Musashi Miyamoto, and we did Samurai 2 Duel at Ichijoji Temple. So this is rounded off. Remember, these films came out 1 year apart from each other, 1954, 55, and then this one was 56. So they're very tight. Made back to back, and this kind of runs out the stories. So it is worth mentioning. Obviously, we'll start spoiler free, like we always do. We'll warn you in the middle before spoilers, but I think it's important to note that we're probably going to have to casually spoil the first two while we're talking about even the spoiler free section of this one, because it's a continuation of that story. It's a serialized story, in that sense.
Yeah.
So that's important. So that's what we're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do. So I'd seen these before, which I mentioned in the last couple, and you had not. So this was your first time getting to the end of the story, and this one is pretty simple. It's simple for the most part. It starts off with a little bit of there's a lord wanting a trainer to train him in sword playing, and the way of the samurai, and he wants Musashi, but Musashi's kind of just ignoring him. But his lieutenants are like, hey, Sasaki. Sasaki, of course, being the rival samurai that was introduced in the last film. Like, hey, he's really good, you should have him. So there's a little bit sort of politics playing back and forth with that.
Yeah.
And just kind of what's going on. And Otsu, who, of course, is in love with Musashi, trying to find him. As is Akemi, also trying to find him. But Akemi's the more villainous love interest, who's been a bit more vicious in her time. But ultimately, it gets to this point where they realise they're in each other's paths again, and Sasaki asks him for a duel. In fact, he murders four sort of weaker samurai to get his attention, and it's when Musashi tries to go to the trainer of the school that they came from and say, "Hey, this is your samurai. I brought their bodies back." They want nothing to do with them. They've shamed the school by losing.
Yeah. Basically, anyone we train is better than that, so they can't be ours. So we don't even recognize them.
Yeah, so he doesn't even know their names, so he just takes them and buries them himself. And it was a very beautiful shot with the sun behind him, and this is when Sasaki shows up and says, "Hey, I want to fight this duel," and he wants to do it right there and then. And he says, "No, let's do it tomorrow. I don't want the school thinking I'm fighting on their behalf, because the last thing I want to do is let anyone think that." So they're ready for tomorrow, but then Musashi realizes he still wants to learn and train and experience more. He wants to continue on his path to achieving inner peace, to achieving the way of the samurai before he goes on this duel. Because he also sees this as a kind of a finale to his training. This is the final, the greatest fight I'm ever going to have. Because they both see each other as their match, as the greatest swordsmen outside of possibly themselves. So he sends him a message saying, "Hey, we'll do this in 1 year. In 1 year, we will have this duel. But until then, I'm going to go on a journey to discover myself," and so on. It's worth mentioning as well, he's got a companion, the kid from the last movie, who actually wasn't in it a ton. He meets the kid at the start of the last movie, and we see him a little bit here or there, but this one, he's actually got the kid with him the whole time.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting him to be quite as prominent based on the last movie.
Yeah, Jotaro, and he ends up picking up another guy in a very funny scene, actually. They're staying at this inn in the earlier part of the film, and Jotaro, the kid, they're eating dinner, they're having ramen, and he gets really annoyed that all the guys next door in the inn are all being really noisy. So he goes outside and tells them to all shut up, and then comes back in. And Musashi's like, "Oh, hey, you're very persuasive. They've all been quiet," but we see them in the other room, and they all look like livid. And the main guy is like, "Oh, his name's Kumi," and he's like, "Oh, oh God, no!" And they all come in, and he's like, "Oh, you will apologize for this. You dishonored and shamed us in public. How dare you?" And they want to fight, and Musashi's just ignoring them and trying to eat his dinner, and he just keeps eating casually. No matter how many threats they throw at him, he just keeps eating like he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Until he starts to notice a few flies, and he just he catches a fly with his chopsticks, and it's like, okay, that was impressive.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. And then he picks up another fly with chopsticks. Then he catches another one. Then he picks up another one. He's like, "There's too many flies. Wash my chopsticks." And then they all just back out the room like, did you see that? He caught like 5 flies with chopsticks. Like, he didn't miss once. Like, he just kept doing it.
Yeah,
like
really
it was
casually.
nothing. So then next day, this guy, Kumi, he is now following along. He has now decided he's a pupil of Musashi. he's there to serve. So
Yep.
he's a bit more comic relief. He kind of tags along for the ride. And that's kind of it. And he ends up, the main portion of the film is that he settles in a village. There's a village who's been ravaged by bandits on the regular. Very Seven Samurai, actually, funnily enough.
It is, yeah.
This village has been ravaged by bandits, so he's like, you know what, we'll stay here. Let's build a little farm. Let's build a little hut, and we'll grow some crops, and
help them out a little bit.
We can help here. We've got purpose here. And it's very full circle for him, because it's kind of the idea that he hated doing regular work back in the first movie, and now he's kind of come full circle, and he sees the value in it, even though he's this trained samurai who can do this and that. All well, of course, there's bandits around that are of course going to cause some trouble. All well, Akemi's still plotting and scheming to try and get to him, and obviously Otsu's on her way as well. And then all over this, we have this hanging deadline, this duel that's going to happen after 1 year. So that is the film. That is the premise of Samurai 3. So I'll ask the question, Car, did you enjoy Samurai 3 Duel at Ganryu Island?
Yeah, I did. It's pretty good. I don't think I liked it quite as much as the second one, but maybe more than the first.
It's a reasonable place to be. I mean, if anything, that tells me it's a pretty consistent quality line across the board.
Yeah, there's not that much between them all. I think this one, I think it's a little... I like it more than the first because, you know, it has all those ending beats, the conclusion, the satisfying notes there. But then the second one just had a little bit more... It was a little bit more exciting. Had a bit more going on.
Okay. It's funny, I feel like the first act of this one's maybe the weakest first act out of the 3 movies. I think once it goes on the journey though, once the duel for a year's been set, about 35 minutes in or whatever it is, I think from that point on, I might like it the most. I at the very least, I think the final 10 minutes is the best, because this series has been gorgeous throughout. The final 10 minutes of this is my favourite scene of the entire trilogy.
Yeah, every shot on the beach is gorgeous.
Yeah, the final duel takes place on the shore, where one of them's like in the water just a little bit, and then the other one's on the beach, and the entire time the sun is. And there's a couple of rear screen projection shots, a couple of close ups like that, but for the most part, this is all shot at sunrise, and I can't imagine how many days they have to keep coming back at the same time to get the takes.
Just to get it nailed, yeah, I know.
Because it's gorgeous, it looks fantastic.
It is. I was, obviously the fight choreography has been great throughout the trilogy. This one felt like it focused the most on the footwork. Like I've seen a lot of other samurai movies of the period. The other 2 films didn't do it quite as much as this one, where it really kind of focused, especially the early on that fight where they just stood watching each other. It's quite a long drawn out moment, and it really just focuses on the feet more than the other 2 have.
Oh yeah, there's a great shot where they're both running sideways, at the start of that fight, and they're almost trying to psych each other out with footwork.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. And there's a great thing here as well, where early on in the film, Sasaki, he's basically doing a presentation, like an exhibition fight for the Lord to prove that he's worthy of being hired to be the trainer. And it's one of the Lord's guards or whoever who's doing the fight, and they're just going to fight with, he's got a spear, but he's got like a cover over the spear, because it's not a lethal fight. And Sasaki, being kind of egotistical, says, "Take off the guard. Don't worry about hurting me. Take it off." But he still uses his wooden sword. He doesn't use a real sword, and he ends up beating him so badly that he cripples him. And this is like a great shame. It's like, no, you went too far. You went further than you had to. This is a sign of... It's a lack of control, if nothing else, but it's also a sign of brutality, right? And there's a great touch to this where at the end of the film, during the final fight, and I guess we're kind of in spoilers here at this point. I mean, I don't know how to talk about this one without spoilers, to be honest. Outside of just saying, oh yeah, it's great, the characters have great endings, and there's this beautiful, the fighting's great, again. It's more of what you got in the last...
More nice music, the character stuff's pretty effective.
Yeah. I did notice in the music, the main theme didn't do the last bit at any point in this movie.
No, it didn't.
Because there's that bit at the end. It was a at the end. They always did that at the end of the main theme. They didn't do it in this one.
I was really surprised because when it was doing that a few, I noticed it, a few times.
You thought it was going to come at the end.
They're saving it for the end.
Yeah.
And then it didn't. It was a little weird.
I really thought the final shot we were just going to hear the final bit of the music.
Yeah, I could have seen that, but no, didn't. It didn't feel lacking though. It still worked. Maybe just noticeably weird.
Music was still very good, yeah. But like I say, so the final fight, Musashi makes the choice to bring a wooden. He carves out a wooden. I don't know what to call it, a sword, but a stick essentially.
Yeah. And
he fights with a stick, and obviously by the end he pulls out his blades because he has to, he has to win. But there's a great just sort of bookending here where he uses a wooden stick to basically beat him, when before that's what he did, that's what Sasaki did. And he did it brutally. So there was some nice sort of bookending to that. The final fight, though, the entire build up to it, the way it all looks, I would say the beautiful sunrise cannot be emphasized enough.
It's gorgeous.
Final fight is gorgeous as shit, and most of it is staring, it's psyching each other out, it's the pacing, as opposed to constantly hitting and blocking. Right? There's only
very little of that. Yeah.
Very few swipes, if you will, and. All good, but some of the other moments before leading up to this, it's when he's saying goodbye to Otsu, because obviously this is on an island. They're going to have this duel, so he's leaving on a boat. So he's saying goodbye to her before he gets on a boat, and the main theme kicks in as he's leaving, and it's this beautiful scene because he basically, and you could argue that it was part of the reason why he wins. If we want to say it's beyond just physical skill, is that because he leaves with a clear head, because he clears the air with Otsu about how they both feel about each other, and they're honest, and he even outright refers to her as a samurai's wife, implying that if he comes back, that's what they're going to be doing. And they leave in this place where, because he thinks she's mad at him, she thinks he's mad at her for what happened in the last movie. They think they're both mad at each other for the opposite reasons, and they kind of reconnect over this, and they kind of finally admit how they both feel. And he leaves with a clear head, as he says, and I think him, because I think at the end of the last film he made a mistake, like because he renounced love. He's like, no, love just confuses things. I'm going to ignore that and just be on my way and be a samurai. And I think him trying to ignore that side of him is him not being clear. So by choosing to acknowledge it and accept it for what it is and understand it,
it's why I like to say this movie is actually pretty straightforward, because it kind of just takes all the ideas from the first two and takes it to the logical conclusion. For the most part, there's very little surprises or twists or anything like that.
I'd argue the one surprise would be Akemi has a moment of redemption before she snuffs it, because she is awful in this movie. She makes a deal with the bandits to distract them, get their guard down, and then signal the bandits to come in and slaughter the entire village. And she does so. She sets the hut on fire. She's going to try and kill Otsu. She's going to try and have an axe fight with her.
She's in there with a hatchet. Going, come on then.
But then she has a change of heart when Otsu's like, no, I don't. She gets like, no, this is awful. I don't want to fight. We're not. No. She has a change of heart and she saves her from the fire. And then when the head bandit tries to grab Otsu when he sees her, and the implication is quite clear what he's going to try and do with her. Akemi grabs the spear and stabs him in the back, and she ends up getting killed in the process. He turns around, swipes his sword at her, and that's how she dies. But she dies saving her. But she has this really sort of bittersweet moment with Musashi, because earlier on she tried to it's like, hey Musashi, I want you to hold me in your arms just once. You can squeeze me to death. I just want to be held in your arms. And he holds her as she's dying. It's this kind of like, you know what? For as morbid as this,
what you wanted.
For as morbid as this sounds, she kind of earned it. For what level this might be, she earned it in that final moment.
She earned just the small moment.
Yeah. So and even Otsu cries at her grave. It's this is a sad moment. Actually, what I thought was good, we were talking about the sunrise. I thought the fight that was going on during all this bandit fight, and Musashi's fighting various bandits. A lot of the houses and huts behind them are all on fire. And again, there's a couple of rear screen projection moments, but for the most part, they're standing in front of a hut that's completely engulfed in flames. They're shooting that.
Yeah, definitely. It looks great, doesn't it?
It does. It feels real. It feels like, no, they're standing in front of this burning hut. And all I could think was like, guys, do not screw up this take, because then we have to rebuild the hut to set it on fire again.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't fake. And it's like, okay, sure, it's just a cheap wooden hut, so they'll just do it. But like you say, it's the technical. Okay, we've got to get this done. Let's nail it.
Yeah, the joke I always go back to is when they were making Terminator 2, the Cyberdyne building at the end. Remember that? That blows up, of
Yeah.
course. They set off the bomb and it all blows up. They actually blew up a building for that. They found a building that was going to be demolished anyway and said, "Hey, can we blow this up and film it?" And of course, they arranged it, blah blah, and they set up all these charges. It was a big, obviously, demolitions job. Everyone, all these experts on site, blowing it all up, getting all these different shots of it, all at the same time because you can only do it once. And at the end of it, the DOP turned around to camera and said, "Oh, was I meant to be rolling during that?" I appreciate that sense of humor. That's good.
Yeah. No, I always appreciate the things. Just when it takes a long time. So there's in the third Lord of the Rings movie, there's a scene where all these skulls come like crashing down around them inside the mountain, and there's like thousands of skulls, and they talk on the making of documentary stuff that
all 70 hours of it, yes.
yeah, it wasn't like a one take thing. They did it. It'll burst out of this thing, and then they had to spend 4 hours, everyone just going around picking them up, reloading it, so to do it again.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man.
If I
just appreciate the effort.
Speaking of explosions, here's another example that could have went very wrong had the actor not stayed in character. And it's the Dark Knight. It's when Joker's walking away from the hospital, and when he presses that button that was supposed to blow up, and it didn't. There was a delay. There was a 5-10 second delay, and had Heath Ledger went, "Hey, this isn't working, guys. Where's the explosion?" They would have had to have cut away from that shot because it would have been unusable. But instead, he stayed in character and sort of pressed at the button a few times, as if the Joker's annoyed. Why is this not blown up? One bang, and it's a great little extra moment because it's a great little character moment as he's trying to hit it. But if he'd not went in, because again, they really blew up a building. That wasn't CG. They blew up an old building. So but I think what we're saying here is it adds this level of authenticity to it and spectacle, where this is an era before CG. It's an era before all these big we can do ships falling out the sky and we can do buildings going upside down and all that. But there's something about just setting an entire building on fire and having them fight in front of it. It's like, this is actually really special.
I think it's you respect the fact that okay, you've got to get this right in one take, otherwise you've got a lot of work to go back to square one. Whereas with the CG, that's not there. Do a million takes, throw it in, whatever you want.
Yeah, exactly. And there's not an artistry to that. There absolutely is, but there is something special about just doing it this way. And so much of this series has been all these gorgeous shots of them out in the fields, out in the forest, out in whatever.
I really appreciate the distinct style. Like this one, like I say, it's all these oranges. The fire, the sunsets, the sunrises, right?
Mm.
The first one was just lots of vibrant colors. We spoke a lot about that. The second one's this really interesting one where it's the darker middle section. It's kind of more muted. There's a lot more greys and browns and greens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I appreciate about this is that I think because it's the end, there's an obvious thing here you'd think they might do is where they'd have it at a sunset at the end, but instead they chose sunrise. And I like that because the idea is it's not. I mean, yeah, sure, it's the completion of his journey. He's achieved full samurai at this final moment. But it's the idea that this is actually a beginning. This is the start of this new part of his life, and he's going to go off with Otsu and do whatever. And I'm sure the kid will stick around, and that'll be their adopted son, and everyone will live happily ever bloody after. But it's a sunrise, and that's kind of sweet, as opposed to the sunset. Yeah. So it's symbolic.
Just a little bit different to usual, isn't it?
Yeah. You get that final moment where he's on the boat and he's like getting, he's riding back. Obviously, the sailors there, rowing away. And he just starts. He cries. He cries of like happiness that he's finally reached this moment.
Mm.
It's just like a really.
It's a big moment. Like if you go back to the first one, kind of a bit of a dick, a bit selfish.
Yeah.
And here he is now as a completely different person, literally like completely different name and everything.
Yeah, he basically started off as you and ended up as Superman. I mean, that's a transformation.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Read into that. Connor's a bit of a dick, right? Moving on.
I'm owning it. It's fine.
Yes. So no. I think obviously the big bulk of the film though was the because I think the idea that him sitting down with the villagers was a really sort of heroic act. It was like, okay, let's be here because we can help here without ever saying that that's what the intention is. He just says, no, we're going to build a hut here, and like here we're going to live here. What? That's the journey over. We're just staying here.
It's pretty clear what's going on.
Yeah. No, it's good. And obviously some of them die, the villagers die. Obviously Kumi dies as well. In fact, there's some joking early on with the kid, that the kid is like, no, I've been here longer, so you should refer to me as master. I'm your master. and he kind of goes along with it kind of jokingly, but then the kid actually like doesn't save him because he still dies, but he fights the attacker and fends him off afterwards, and he's like, no, you really were my master, and then he dies. And it's like, oh man, that's a little arc. So there was a little bond between them. There's a little arc for him because he was a bit of a dick at the start, and then he kind of respected Musashi because he had all this patience and skill, and so no, it's hard to fault any of the character beats. And as I will say, I was digging the Sasaki, the villain. He starts off looking like he did in the last movie, but by the end, because the year passes and he becomes the teacher of this lord, he kind of just takes that job in the meantime because what else is he doing? And he actually like has his hair down in a completely different way. It looks almost like it's like the final form of the boss, right? He's changed for the final fight.
I really enjoyed Sasaki because obviously in the last movie he was kind of very respectful. It's like, yeah, go on then, we're gonna make each other better, and his ego kind of grew over the time, and and it got to this point where he was just become obsessed, and that was just desperate to win rather than.
And I think that's why he lost. It's the ego.
Yeah.
He wasn't.
Yeah, definitely.
He wasn't at peace with himself, and I think it's notable. Actually, I love the final shot of him when he's lying there dead. He looks like he's smiling. It looks like his dead body's smiling because he went out as a samurai.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd almost actually analyze it and say, did he expect to lose, and was he hoping to? Because he realized his ego had gotten out of control, and this was the only way to become a samurai again, was to go out with honor. Was to.
Could be. Maybe that's why he was so upset about the year's wait, because he wanted to go out there. He didn't want to lower himself to being the teacher and make himself worse, because he knew he'd get worse.
Yeah. And again, like him with his bride to be was a very different chemistry and tone compared to Musashi and Otsu. So no, I mean I think a couple of pacing problems in the first act maybe aside, I have very little to complain or criticize with this.
No, I'm the same. As I think it was just personal preference really in that first act as to why I prefer the second one.
That's fair.
I think it just structurally it was a little bit more exciting with the set pieces, a little better paced.
Yeah. I think I like the structure of the first one the most because it is the origin story. There's a nice through line throughout that whole thing, and then the second one's is kind of like all these different pieces coming into play, and the third one of course is the big finale, and kind of characters realizing what they've went through. And there's little cameos here or there from other characters who were bigger in the last couple. The monk's there briefly. The guy who was with Akemi's mother is with the bandits briefly. We see a few characters who are still alive, kicking around.
Yeah, it's a great trilogy overall, though.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best. Like I feel like obviously it's not mainstream because it's a Japanese series from the 50s, but like I feel like when you start thinking of all the best trilogies, like this is up there. This is.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I'd put it in quite the best. I don't think it quite reaches that height for me, but it's definitely one of the most consistent trilogies.
I sense a top 10 trilogies video coming up at some point.
At some point, probably.
Which is why I'm not going to rank mine just now. I want to say
No, I'm not either. I'm just saying, it's very good, and it's worthy of being in the conversation, but I don't think it would go too highly on my top 10. But it's so consistent that it arguably puts itself above other trilogies where maybe one of the movie falters a bit more than these do.
I guarantee I like it more than two of your top 3 trilogies.
Oh, I know you do. Yeah.
In fact, one of your favourite trilogies, which you actually mentioned in this very episode,
wouldn't appear on your list.
Wouldn't appear on my list at all. No,
I bet it wouldn't.
No, and you would be leaving off some truly classic trilogies as well because you're a filthy heathen who hasn't seen full trilogies of certain things.
That's true. Out of choice.
That's worse.
There is a one trilogy that springs to mind that is on the shelf behind me. I've still only watched the first one. Been there for about 3 years, maybe longer.
I'm trying to think of something really crushing to say, and it's not quite coming to me, but damn it.
Yeah, you already brought your worst when you told me how this was above some of the other ones that I'd have.
But at least my hatred of certain trilogies is well established in my taste. Because you've just not seen some of the big ones.
Yeah, so I'm just not bothered about.
Anyway, Samurai
That
3.
trilogies list might be one of the most heated debates we ever have.
It may actually be, because it'll be very different. There'll be a few trilogies, of course, that appear in both. I can name a
Yeah.
couple off the top of my head that I feel like we'll both have quite high, but there's a couple that you'll have it probably at number 1 and 2, or maybe 1 and 3, and then there's some that I'll have quite high that you won't have at all.
Yeah.
It's funny, I feel like talking about the third movie is almost the hardest one, because I'm like, well, I want to talk about the cast, but I'm like, well, we talked about the cast already. They're just as good as they were the last two films.
Like I said, it's very much just a conclusion, and most of it goes as you expect. So we talked about the new color scheme. We talked about the slight differences in the choreography, and these things. But it's very consistently just okay. This is what we had in the last movie, but more of the same with some little differences, and it's still an excellent movie.
Yeah. Also, I think there's something to be said that Sasaki is gunning for this duel. He's the one who keeps asking for it, and Musashi accepts that it's going to happen because now the challenge has been put down. But it's Sasaki who really wants it. Like, he's determined to prove himself. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I think that's the ego. I think that's the no. Because hell, even they point out, because early on in the film, again, the kid kind of insults a bandit at this little tournament, and sorry, not bandit, a monk. It's a monk. So there's monk fighters there, and he insults the monk who was winning, and he's really egotistical. This guy, he's like, "Oh, I've just beat everyone. I won this tournament, no challenge. I'll take on 3 at a time, 4 at a time. Don't care." And the kid insults him, so the monk tries to fight the kid, because again, ego. And yeah, sure, show you're a big man. Fight the 12-year-old. Yeah, good idea. And Musashi comes in, and not only does he like obviously stick up for the kid, but he tries to avoid fighting at all costs. He not only tries to apologize, he gets down on one knee and humbly apologizes for what the kid said. And it's showing you that he has this restraint now, that he will try and avoid the conflict at all costs. And it's only when the guy attacks him that he
still doesn't attack back, though. He
really?
just grabs the weapon.
Yeah, it's basically a defensive, but it's like a sign of strength, because the main monk comes in and like whispers in his ears, like, "Oh, don't try and take this guy. You have no chance.
You've got no chance." Yeah.
If you keep pushing this, he is going to wipe the floor with you." And he's like, "Musashi." He's like, he knows he's like, "That's who. That's
like,
who this
oh
is."
shit. Yeah.
Because
there's a lot of little moments. I like the bit with the Sasaki talking about his sword, being like, the sword's got a reputation already, as we kind of saw start in the last movie, but he hasn't made that name for himself just as much yet. He's not quite at the level of the sword, and that's his his aim, is to get up that high.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you're coming into this wanting more action than you had in the previous entries, that is maybe the disappointment that some people might have. I actually like that it doesn't do that, because it is the more thoughtful one. As he's improved, he's trying to avoid conflict as much as he can, but it makes the build to that final fight all the more kind of special.
Pretty great, yeah.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize enough how beautiful that final fight is. Like, the entire thing.
So good.
Is some of the best looking cinema of the era. Like, seriously, it's gorgeous. So by all means, I highly recommend you check out the Samurai trilogy if you haven't. Really good. Criterion have got it. I assume that means it's on Filmstruck, because they have a lot of the Criterions. But definitely have a look see. So we should rate this. We should rate Samurai 3 Duel at Ganryu Island. What are you giving it?
I'm actually giving it the same score as the second one, even though it's only slightly below, which is an 8.5.
Yeah. Nine out of 10 for me, which is the same I give the first one. I went 8.59, I think.
Yeah.
So, what did you do? You did 8.5, 8.5?
No, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Consistent.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean that
yeah.
Hard to complain when they're that stable in scores, but yeah, you got that. Samurai 3.
Mine average is slightly lower than yours, but still, like, hey, if I'm taking 8 and 8.5s, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, it's like an 8.35 average, or 8.4, something in that range. No, cool. So yeah, so that's Samurai 3. So we've wrapped up that trilogy. and we'll obviously dive into more samurai films at some point. Although we'll probably take a little break for now, because we just did 3 of them pretty close together. But there's obviously a lot of Kurosawa and some other big Japanese samurai films.
Probably next year now when we get to more.
Yeah. But yeah, so by all means, let us know what you think of these films if you've seen them before. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. If you want to support the show and everything we do here, you can get these in Fluxes 1 week early at the $1 tier, and there's other bonuses as well, including 121 Extra, which is like a movie topic show which we do every other month, and it's exclusive to patrons. That alternates with Almost Cancelled Extra, which is TV topics, and you get them at the $1 tier as well. So there's a bunch of stuff to go check out if you want to. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys, and we'll see you next time.